Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm trying to set something up really quickly to see if I can. I'm trying to do as many backup recordings as possible.
Hey Bree. Hey Cassie.
We got folks in so we're gonna get started right now. But for those of you who are in the chat, um, feel free to type in the chat, uh, ask questions, comments, all the things. This is an interactive forum, obviously, but we are pleased to. I'm trying to not have it be like super close to my face. um, we are pleased to have our creating space today with Esma. So, Esma, if you would like to introduce a little bit about who you are, um, and yeah, about yourself.
Okay. I'm Esma. I am basically here to talk about Ramadan today and how that's affecting COVID because I am a Black queer Muslim, so I have some perspective on that. And also, I joined uh Anytown and CTV about like a year ago by mistake. Best mistake that happened to me.
That's awesome. And by mistake, I feel like
Yeah.
separately from now, I definitely want to hear this story. Different time. But I think we'll go ahead and get started with because we're talking about Ramadan in a time of COVID. Ramadan is coming up in a couple of days. Like
Yeah, today's the 21st, right?
yeah,
Okay, yeah, the 23rd. Yeah.
23rd. And so in our community, and in the evening as well. In the evening, I think you had mentioned that you were pre-fasting and going through that whole process and everything. So this is absolutely timely to be talking about Ramadan. And I think in specifically kind of like thinking about, especially since with COVID, like we're doing a lot of social distancing, people aren't able to gather as much. So what does kind of, as we kind of start to just have this conversation, what does community look like during Ramadan?
During Ramadan, it's okay, so we fast from around sunrise to sunset. So this year it's going to be from 6 a.m. ish to 8:30 ish. And usually in non-COVID times, we would gather and like break that fast with community, go to prayers at the masjid or with family. And there would be like tarawih, night prayers that we would go to. And it's also like just a reliance for like also some people for meals and just that sense of community after being exhausted the whole day, just have a moment of peace there.
Mm. So so being together with other people is definitely like a huge part of
Yeah.
serving Ramadan. Um, and so as we're prepared, or as you're preparing, and as we are approaching Ramadan soon, what are what are some of the things that you've been considering, and like what's kind of different about this year, and what's different about this time with?
For this time, for me, what I've been considering personally is well, every year we always have to consider schedules, working and school, but like this year it's amped up to an extreme. So like quick story time to give you context. Basically, my first year, like I entering high school and doing AP tests, I was fasting that year and it coincided with Ramadan for the first time. So I had two exams back to back and it was like 6 hours of testing straight with like no food and water. And I asked for an exemption from my guidance counselor, which she had basically told me was because I would be in school that day. It wasn't a valid excuse to be exempted because starving, I guess, wasn't a valid excuse. Yeah, so basically she told me I could have like a 30-minute break, which ended up being 5 minutes. And I like, after that exam, I basically was delirious afterwards and I just like passed out as soon as I got home. And I failed one, passed the other, and I was like, I was grateful enough for that. So that was just navigating it during non-COVID times. This year, basically, we have to take those same exams because they're exams that like shave off college costs, which is really essential for some students. And it's like 45 minutes for each question. So like answering that now and like making time to like rest because you actually don't get any time to rest this time because it's all timed. So they don't really give exemptions for that. And also like sometimes the test will coincide with prayers. So like I have to think about what am I going to do? Am I going to put education first or religion first? Do I want to pass the exam or do I want to pray asir or something like that?
So this is something you've already had to navigate multiple times, but at the same time, like now, especially because with the virtual e-learning and everything else, there's all these other restrictions that are interrupting or making it so that it's harder to actually find ways of working around it.
Yeah. And also like another added challenge is with e-learning, aside from testing, it's staring at a computer all day and having deadline after deadline. When I'm in school, I can get the accommodation from my teacher. They'll be pretty chill about it. But with some e-learning, they're just like, you got to turn it in. And I'm just staring and like starving and trying to hone in that concentration.
Mm. So in kind of what would be as like just kind of like starting with just the e-learning aspect of things, and we'll talk about other institutions and other kind of other aspects that like COVID is affecting right now. But like what would be your recommendations? Like what are things like if there's teachers watching, if there's educators who might have an influence, like what would be your message to those folks?
Well, I know for sure that they can't just cancel everything. I understand that, obviously. But like keep in mind that you could extend some deadlines or you can be patient with us. Because to tie it back, if you think about it during these weeks, it's going to be a few weeks. And just even with testing, those 2 weeks that we're just asking for extending and accommodations. And then like with Christianity and those types of religions, they have a 2-week holiday break. And their exam was pushed before. So there's always that preference of one is more important and has priority over the other in this country, especially in the education system and like working and holidays and breaks.
And so we already have that preference. Now, that actually brings up a really good point. So with COVID, right? So, and Sam had pointed this out, and it was like, oh, like, because we're following closely some of the different orders that are coming out from different government institutions. Like there's local level, there's state level. And then Cassie said our deadlines for some assignments got extended for Good Friday. Ooh, okay, really good. Yeah, so that exactly what Esma was saying about that preference for certain religions, for Christianity in particular. And so speaking of that preference, one of the things that I remember recently came out with, there was an article where there was a pastor in the Tampa Bay area in a church in Tampa who got arrested because he had basically, at the time, there was a Hillsborough, or Tampa order that said, hey, no large gatherings, had a massive gathering, right? Religious gathering, got arrested. But then shortly thereafter, we had an order from the governor, right, from the state level, and it listed religious gatherings as a essential need, right, as a special exemption. Based off of kind of your own experience and your own observations, like what I kind of am doing a leading question here, but like in a sense, like what, because that was coming out right around Easter, right before Easter. Like what do you think would be the government's response or other institutions' responses for, let's say if something similar were to happen, right? Yes, we want to be socially responsible, and at the same time, like theoretically, right? If folks were to gather, saying, hey, this is actually legal based off of the fact that this order came out, how do you think people and institutions would react differently to Muslims gathering as opposed to Christians gathering?
Yeah, when I saw a post on Instagram basically saying that order, and I was like saying the hypocrisy of that. Oh my gosh. Because, okay, if that whole order, if it was like thoroughly enacted, because it's like people are on the fence about it, if I were to like exit a masjid as myself, like as a person who's Black and Muslim, and also to be aware that I have like a lot of privilege as someone who's not a hijabi, and I don't wear my religion on my sleeve like I do my sexuality to an extent and my race, just to put that out there too. But like if I did leave the masjid looking as I am, it would not be met with like the same reaction as Christianity. Like he was arrested, so I felt like if someone like me or like anyone else in the religion did that, it would be probably met with a lot more violence.
Mm. Mm. So definitely like yes to the legality aspect of things, but then at the same time that physical violence element, that heightened sense of aggression.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there was like some articles from alt-right and conservative groups saying how they were afraid that Muslims would spread COVID from massive gatherings. But like, first of all, we weren't even the ones that were doing it.
Mm.
And from my spheres of like community here, a lot of us have been like saying on our stories and everything to stay home, pray at home, because to us, like religion, it's gonna matter not based off the place, just like based off your heart.
Mm. So again, that sense of the scapegoating that's happening, and I think I love that I don't love that it's a reality, but like the fact that you brought in that intersectional element of things of like what are the different identities that are intersecting and like how people are seen, and then again that response as well, because yes, super frustrating. So definitely I think like there's definitely that sense of things are being kept in mind when decisions are being made, and then of course the impact of these decisions, it's not felt equally across the board. It is going to fit certain groups of people more so, and especially as you said, based off of other intersections of identity. In kind of thinking about sort of your observation in the Muslim community of like what are some other things that are being considered right now? Like I know that there's your personal considerations and like what you're going through, and so like definitely like if you could speak to that of like what is your sort of process, like what are you, as we're going into in the next couple of days, but then is my connection better?
Yeah.
Okay. I am so sorry about that. I have to switch. Sometimes I have to switch and see, because sometimes it works better with the Wi-Fi. Sometimes it works better with data. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess basically I wanted to hear your personal kind of process and experience of like how are you preparing and like what are you keeping in mind for yourself, but then and then also like other folks that you know, family members, friends, like who, like what are other folks keeping in mind and what are other folks concerned about as we're going into the next few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of considerations. So aside from school, there's also the work aspect. So working, if you're going to be working and fasting, you have to basically, okay, the country by law, they have to give us the accommodation and everything, but like there's always nuances to that and how well it's enacted basically. So like, yeah, sure, I could say I need the accommodation, the extra time to pray, but like it can still affect me in like time of hours that I'm getting and all of that. And there are also other Muslims that I know that are thinking of not working while they're fasting because of like just the exhaustion level they'll be at, but at the same time that's money that they're not going to get back. And like, yeah, around that, because my family, we own a business, like a small business around Temple Terrace, and that's like a huge Muslim population right there. So like a lot of that, what people are dealing with is just like the money aspect, because there's also like this negative connotations people have with the religion and COVID. Apparently that's rising up right now. And also like the non-leniency that landlords are giving to the renters and everything that's happening, like was actually one of our neighbor businesses right there, and just how they're going to accommodate getting the money but also observing the religion.
So like I think I was having this conversation with India about like the East Asian community because of like the, you know, people calling it like the Chinese virus and things like that, but now like all the Islamophobia is coming out at higher rates, in the sense of, okay, like we're not going to frequent these businesses. We are going to kind of, in a sense, like people are expressing that in a way that is actually like having increased impact during this time.
And even though there's no correlation at all, just in these times of panic, a lot of people want someone to blame, and it's always the person who's like at the bottom that they want to blame, just to scapegoat there.
Scapegoating. So what are so you were talking about like definitely like that choice between, or kind of like that false choice or having to choose between working, and not working, and then even, and then kind of how to navigate, in a sense, all the Islamophobia. What I think you had mentioned, we're kind of like doing like a brief chat, but like you were mentioning also like medical professionals as well, and kind of like, what do you think, like you were saying that there's a lot of folks in the Muslim community who are also doctors, who are in, medical professions, healthcare.
Yeah.
How that.
So my mom, she's a nurse, and majority of our family friends are also nurses and doctors, also Muslim there. So they're in the hospitals right now, and like some are preparing to fast, and I know some probably aren't fasting at all. Personally, my mom doesn't because immunocompromised. There's exemptions to that. But just the people that I do know, the family friends, like it's just that choice of, hey, how do we navigate saving lives basically, or practicing our religion? And it's just this ultimatum, and there's not really like any leniency or like that appreciation for that sacrifice that's being shown.
Like what? Because like this is something that. How is it different than? Is it different now in particular because of COVID? Is this something that is continuously happening? Obviously, like in other times and spaces, in terms of like, like times for prayer and things like that.
It's definitely heightened because of COVID. Like if it wasn't COVID, then you could probably take a break or take off because the demand isn't that high. You're not as needed. But like in this time, nurses and doctors are needed. So like to some people, that's going to take priority over religion. And to some people, that's just like an impossible decision to make, because both are like equally important.
So again, that having to choose between, again, because of the fact that like, ideally, right, we don't want to work people to the bone and be like, yes, you have to sacrifice everything in order to do your job and to serve your community. And then sort of we're creating this, Sam says, false choice between being able to practice and observe your own faith. And also, my understanding is, I think you talked a little bit about community and Ramadan, but you also mentioned like volunteering and like service as being a massive component.
Yeah.
And so kind of like almost like that sense of like, it is a false choice because it is literally kind of one and the same in a lot of ways. And it's sort of like creating this weird false dichotomy of having to choose.
Yeah. And especially during Ramadan, basically what it is a lot of the time is how, because of course those accommodations are never met. It's always how can we exhaust ourselves to the point where we're still going to have enough to give tomorrow to people. And at this point, people are just now wanting more and more from everyone in the fields who's like fasting, and everyone in the stores who's working, everyone at school.
What are things, and now as we're kind of moving into kind of like a broader conversation, like so like I think starting with schools and like teachers and and education, what are things that folks like me and other folks in the community can keep in mind to practice allyship and to be supportive during this time?
Okay, yeah. For sure, if someone needs to pray, needs that space, or like just needs someone to help advocate in that sense, it's always helpful because like, again, it's never given the priority. And just to bring it to light too, like if someone's bringing it to light, just to be there to support them through that. What else? Also like acting as a support system right now, because another thing is a lot of people are going to be fasting in isolation who aren't like for me, most of my family, not American citizens out the country. So I have few people to fast with, and I usually do rely on the community aspect. So just to like check in, also do what you can to like recognize that exhaustion is going to be here, and we're trying to have patience as much as we can, but like we're human at the end of the day.
So I'm hearing like having patience, but then also like reaching out and supporting.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
I think,
fasting and isolation, it's very hard. Like I said, the community aspect is so important when you're going through such mental and physical struggle right there.
mm. So what, I'm curious to know sort of like what would it look like kind of like if you are, in a sense, if you had a better system in place, right? And actually, wait, hold on, let me actually read this comment. I think this is Mediel who says, makes me wonder about the push for protecting people's religious freedoms and rights, not talking about Islam. So yeah, definitely that.
Like coming off of that, oh my gosh. Okay, so based off that order, back to what I was saying about the order that DeSantis authorized, it's the justification for it was always free exercise of religion, but I like don't feel it was ever free exercise. It was just about how can we uphold the power of the church with government and like everyone else, they don't matter. Because like I said, if it's not Christian based, what's it really based?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we had that for those who missed it from earlier, Cass made a comment, I think, about exams and things like that were rescheduled or pushed back for Good Friday, and you mentioned the winter breaks and holidays and things like that are all centered around Christianity. But again, we make accommodations. We do make accommodations for religion, but it's which religion, you know?
And I'm okay asking for accommodations, but the fact of the matter is, because there are so many Muslim students in America, at this point, after so many years, like, shouldn't the country already be taking this into consideration?
Yeah. So, and I think, and it's a point of personal reflection as well, right? Of like, before you mentioned that you were pre-fasting, I was like, wait, what? Like, oh, Ramadan is coming up. So it's like, the thing is like, other folks, right? Like, people like me, I'm like, we're not aware of, but we should be, right? We should be thinking about what are the different communities, populations, individuals who are impacted by different decisions and the things that we are not, again, we have the luxury of not thinking about, or we have the privilege of not thinking about when we are part of the majority population. So
And it's also
definitely.
like a very westernized perspective, because if you go to other countries like mine and any other Islamic country, these accommodations for like for just Islam and other religions are going to be met most of the time. But like from a Western standpoint, it's always Christianity, white, from that perspective only.
Yeah. And it's not, and again, it's not considered an accommodation. They're just like, oh, this is normal, as opposed
Yeah.
to this is actually an accommodation. It's just that we're not thinking of it and reflecting of it in that way. I think I wanted to make sure that we covered everything that we were wanting to talk about, and I also want to be cognizant of time, because I know as as we're having this conversation about all of this, and like again the pressure and the kind of the pressure to work and to serve and to perform and all these things, while at the same time fasting and being exhausted, I know that you are taking care of a lot of folks.
Yeah.
So I kind of maybe want to sort of kind of circle around back to that of like sort of what, because we kind of scoped out a little bit. What is it going to look like for you over the next few weeks? Like, what is for you personally? Like, what is if you feel comfortable sharing? Like, what are your personal concerns? What are the things that you're taking into account and what you need?
Definitely the narrative. Okay, so a part of Ramadan, one of the pillars is zakah, basically giving to charity, volunteer work, and just what you can do for others. That's going to be very heightened in the community, especially during COVID. We're going to be looking for ways to help, because that's a way of practicing for us. And after COVID, I don't think people are going to remember the good that the community did. It's going to shift back to that narrative of, oh, we need to be suspicious of these people, terrorists, or something like that. And it's just same was like akin to grocery store workers. They're appreciated now, but like afterwards, is it really gonna be that same way?
So we need to be very cognizant during this time of shifting that narrative of
Yeah.
making sure that we're and recognizing and telling those stories and highlighting when our folks are doing things. And the people are doing
Yeah.
amazing things. So I am I in that process. I would love to have you be able to share all the things that are happening, and if we can help kind of help amplify some of those things.
Clarify what you mean by all the things happening.
So all the things that so in terms of service and I think how, I guess in a sense, like how do we, thank you for that clarifying question of clarification. How do we, what are some things that we can do to continue to, not to continue to start to, and to sustain shifting that narrative? And I also see Sam saying undocumented humans are now essential as well.
Yeah. Tying back to that, undocumented humans, medical professions, very big in the Muslim community. Shifting the narrative from that, how do you say this? One sec. I'm framing it. Okay. Making how we perceive people in these groups, just making it into a different story, I guess, is the best way to say it. Like, remember the actions that they're performing during this time. Keep in mind what they're giving up for you and like what they're giving up to the community, and like tie that back to how things have been treated in the past. Basically, be better. Like just for all of the country, just be better, improve, give more than the bare minimum is the basic premise of that.
It's a lot to think about, and definitely I'm hoping that we have more conversations like this, because I think like part of it is these conversations as a part of shifting the narrative. Obviously there's a lot more that can be done, and a lot of personal work that we have to do as individuals as well, within the community, but yeah, I want
Also,
yeah.
what were you saying? Also
No.
educating on the holiday, because again that negative stereotype that people are associating with Islam, it's just like this is so like, I think one person came to me and they were like basically saying how this person who practiced Buddhism was Muslim, and I was like, well, that's not anywhere near the same. And I'm saying, what else do you know about just the religion and like the whole festivities besides that? Like, what attempts have ever been made for you to educate yourself on that? And also, why should it fall on the shoulders of people who are in it, who are already dealing with the negative associations that come from the ignorance there?
So not burdening folks, and saying like, well, I haven't been taught by somebody else who knows, so therefore like I just don't know, instead taking personal responsibility to learn, because it's like that's what you do as a decent human being, is like learn about other people, engage, take initiative in engaging in cross-cultural interaction, or engaging your own mind in that, so that we are, so in a sense, basically, like I'm gonna call myself on this. Basically, it's like, Masa, the fact that you didn't know that Ramadan was coming up, that's an issue. So like in that sense, right? It's like if I knew more about it, I would know that it was coming up, and we as a collective would be able to do better.
Like, I don't know when Easter is, but I always know when it's coming up. Every single time. I know the week it happens. Everyone's like, oh, there's no school, it's Easter. Yeah, I know it was Easter this week, but now I do. So yeah.
True.
And also,
well,
like,
I want to make sure I did. Oh, go ahead.
oh, the frozen. Oh wait, it's freezing. Okay, I think okay, it's back. Cool. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Also, the education part. Like, if someone's in the middle of fasting, I'm like pretty sure they don't want to educate someone on the whole history of Ramadan right there.
I am so sorry. But I think it was my connection again, because I think you froze for me, and then I was like, oh, I can't hear you. I don't think you can. Yeah. All right. So yeah, what I basically just wanted to make sure that was being respectful of your time, but I wanted to just open it up to just whatever else that you wanted to share so that we can all be aware, and like, because I think you had a couple other thoughts that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I don't know if it came through. I don't know if you heard it, but basically what I was saying, like on the educating piece, like someone in the middle of Ramadan when they're fasting, like no one wants to explain the whole history of Ramadan while they're like actually doing it. So especially like approaching this time, Google, great resource. That's great. Or like asking me in these next 2 days, because afterwards I'm not.
Okay, and I think I saw a laughing face from Sam right before I cut out, and I think that's maybe so I think it made it through, and I was like, now I get to enjoy the humor and the truth in exactly what you said, which is don't bother me. This is not a good idea, not a good
You
time.
got 2 more days to bother me, then I'm out.
Really, really good point. I think that responsibility piece of being cognizant of where other folks are coming from and like making sure that that we do the work ourselves is definitely something that resonates. Yep. Sam's like, yep. Anything else that comes to mind? Some closing reflections, closing thoughts, Esma?
Mainly the accommodation piece. I still want to stress that I don't want to like be seen as the face of the whole religion because again, I don't wear it on my sleeve. There's so many other things that could be talked about, like just in the sense of displaying religion and being out during COVID times. So like just to keep that in mind too, because there's probably going to be a uptake in the discrimination based off of that alone.
So thinking about the diversity within the community. And
Yeah,
thinking
there's so
about
much diversity in the community. Like our struggles are similar, but they're not all the same. Because there's racial ones within the Muslim community, just appearance wise, all of that.
mm-hmm. So yeah, and I think Sam mentioned like, and you mentioned undocumented people
Yeah.
off of visually, right, like you said, wearing hijab, and again like just all the different intersections, like you said, also of race, of nationality, all the different ways that that intersects. So very important things to keep in mind.
Yes.
Esma, I'm hoping that we get to have another conversation at some point. Maybe we'll do another Instagram live at some point in the future.
Okay.
I'm digging this. I had a great time talking to you.
You too.
And I really, really appreciate the time because this definitely, this is in the 2 or 3 days prior to, and at the same time, like you are still doing a service. So I really appreciate that. All right. So this is Esma. Where can people follow you or find you if they want to engage with you, talk to you, learn more outside of
yeah, my Instagram handle is Esma Lopez with 2 A's at the end of Esma. So yeah, just through there. That's fine.
Awesome. And then just a quick plug, you're also
I couldn't hear.
Just a quick plug, you're also an artist.
Yeah, that's why.
Heart. I also said after Ramadan. Yes, so we are connecting after Ramadan.
Yes.
Just my connection keeps cutting out, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a formal sign off and
Got you.
Bye. So,
Bye.
but yeah, but you're an artist. Also, like on your Instagram and other places, people can like see your art, and learn more about all the work that you're doing in the community. I know that Sam met you through community activism.
Yeah, that was the accident story.
That's the accident story.
Yeah.
So I will definitely, I want to hear from your perspective at some point in time, because I think I've heard it from Sam's point of view, but I would love to hear it from your point of view as well. So
Okay.
definitely, Esma, they're a boss human. Follow them, connect with them, see all the amazing things that they're doing, and support them. I have no idea. Sam's like, I have no idea. But yeah, thank you so much for this conversation, and definitely a lot of things for me to think about personally and for us as a community to keep in mind. So thanks, Esma.
Yeah, no problem.
Signing off. Thank y'all.
Bye.
Hi, Esma. Thank you.